Welcome to the K2 Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Karen Kelly. Every week, I'll be sitting down with a sales executive where they'll share their stories and experiences that produce game-changing results. Let's be honest, sales can be a tough game. I'm sure at some point, we've all delivered a less than stellar demo, been ghosted by a client or two, and sometimes maybe we did more talking than listening. And that's where I can help. The stories and insights our guests share can be applied to your own business, your territory, or with your team, so you're not reinventing the wheel. Our weekly tactics and strategies help you get out of your head and start creating your own path towards game-changing results. Welcome back to the K2 Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Karen Kelly. Now, many of you might be finding additional layers of friction or just harder to get into your accounts, whether it's an email response, a phone call, even an introduction. And, when you look at the bigger accounts, it's even harder. And we have to be more strategic and intentional because there's a number of players. And if we're not doing the homework and the research, we're definitely not going to break through the noise. So I'm delighted to share my conversation with Dr. Barbara Weaver-Smith, who is the founder and CEO of the Whale Hunters. She's also a two-time author, and most recently, her Whale Hunters Institute, which is an online training platform. And she's actually cloned herself, and she has Barbara AI, which is an amazing sales coach that she's cloned. So take a listen to that, how she's done it. And this is a great opportunity for sales leaders or small business owners to really ensure that you're reaching your audience, you're giving them 24/7 insights. It's all you, and you can continue to give the message and support them and develop them because of AI. So leverage it while you can. Barbara shared her expertise in both, RFPs, writing them, responding to them, and just, again, the level of intentionality that smaller to medium companies need to take when they're entering or they're trying to target these whales. And a whale, she defines as a 10 to 20x opportunity or deal size. So when you think about landing something like that, that is transformative for your organization. But to do that, we really need to embody and believe that we are bigger. And a lot of times what she shared is the targeting company is more fearful of us than we are of them. So how can we anticipate some of the fears they're going to have of working with a small company and really, inject those into our outreach and disarm them because we know they're afraid. So how can we show them that we have a clear onboarding process, that we have a team that will support them? But because we're smaller, we're nimble and agile, and we can respond quicker and just stop playing small. And so she does a great job of sharing some tactical approaches, but also the mindset we need to adopt. And we all start with mindset to really start hunting the whales that we deserve. And her 3-point framework is scouting, hunting, and harvesting, which is all based off of the Inuits and how they would hunt whales. And they never did it solo; they did it as a village. And so when you look at the complexity of entering an enterprise sales, the number of decision makers, committee members involved, same thing as us. We need to adopt a mindset of what the Inuits did and take the village with us. So take a listen. My eyes, as always, were open, always learning. So I'm very grateful for the values she shared. And take a listen. And thanks for tuning in. Well, I'm absolutely delighted to bring Dr. Barbara Weaver-Smith to the podcast and share her insights as an author and as the most recent offering of Whale Hunters Institute. So, Barbara, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks, Karen. I'm delighted to be here with you.
I know you're going to add tons of insight. And, I love just, if we take a step back, your background and having a PhD in English and just what that brings, that level of credibility, but also the clarity in messaging and vocabulary and really, the words matter. And I feel that that's just one component of what we can do and what we can bring to the experience. So I the fact that you have that is fantastic, just as a start.
Yeah, well, I had to really learn to translate academic writing into business writing, which is interesting. It's kind of two different levels of conversation and especially written words, but definitely my background helps tremendously in what I do now.
Well, just to piggyback on that, the last stat I read is that the emails should be written at a grade 5 level. Like how how do you take your academia and pull it down there? And what are your thoughts on that?
I don't think I write at a grade 5 level, but I probably write at a 8 to 10,
Yeah.
grade 8 to 10
Mhm.
level. But emails, just very short sentences, all simple sentences,
Mhm.
very short, maybe 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah.
That would be 5th grade if you don't use too many big words.
Yeah, it's true. Well, I have a 5th grader, so I get him to proofread
Yeah,
that, and if he gets it, that's the test.
exactly. Yeah.
So I wanted to talk today about, I think when you look at approaching new accounts, regardless if they're small, medium, or large, and you focus on the whales, and we'll get into that in a moment. But regardless of the size, there's an added layer of friction, and there's so much noise out there, and just where we could get in, now I'm not gonna say easier, but quicker perhaps before, it's not the case. And so when you look at the large accounts, the whales as you define them, which are, I think you said 20 times the average of your deal, which is massive, you
Yeah,
know,
10 to 20
to,
times.
and that could be transformational for a company, 10 to 20
Yes, that's
times.
what it's intended to be, absolutely.
And so, what are you seeing? I guess we'll start with kind of the gaps of where people are not hitting the mark when they are targeting those whale accounts. What are they not doing?
Well, first of all, they're not doing enough research or even any research. I'm sure you're like me. I get emails every day from someone trying to sell me something, and they never have any clue who I am.
Hmm.
I get emails asking people that want to write books for me, things like that, and just stupid
Yeah.
things that they pay no attention to who I am. And I'm sure everybody who's listening gets those emails all the time. So you don't want to be sending those emails. You have to. I deal with large accounts all the time. So there's a great deal of research that we do ahead of time. Now, if you're doing more transactional selling and you're trying to reach a lot of people all the time, rather than 2 or 3 big ones,
Hmm.
then I would suggest that at the very least, you need to look at someone's LinkedIn account and know what they do, if they're still in the same job that you think they're in, and see if you can find something about them that will enable you to connect in a personal way. If you went to the same college anytime, or if
Hmm.
there's anything that they do, even in the list of their interests or who they follow, something that you can connect with helps you get through some of that noise.
Hmm. And I would say that's table stakes, but I too, like you, get those emails of it'd be great to start a podcast, and I'm like, well, if you look at my title, like
Yeah,
that's low
exactly.
hanging fruit because it
Yeah,
says
for
in the
sure.
title.
Yeah, well, I mentioned that because people aren't doing that.
Yeah,
And you're in huge competition today, much more than before. It gets more every day.
yeah.
And with large accounts, I don't recommend that you ever try to get into a large account with an email.
Hmm. Okay.
I think you have to be very strategic about how you do that. And when I'm working with my clients, I'm always getting them together as a group, like the leadership group, sales and marketing, in together to talk over this new whale that they want to go after, a corporate account of some size. And they do a lot of discussion about how they could find an entree
Hmm.
into that company, hoping to find someone who knows someone that could get them a warm introduction. That's what we're always looking for. Another way to approach it, if you're looking for a really big deal, is to read Stu Heinecke's book about how to get a meeting with anyone.
Hmm.
And he has dozens and dozens of ideas of how to reach key executives at big companies. It's just, even if you don't ever use one of those ideas, it's worth reading it just for the inspiration. It's so much fun. It's so exciting. Different things that he's done.
Hmm.
I mean, one time he even put a billboard outside where somebody would be driving to work,
Yeah.
call me, things like that. But he has a lot of good ideas. Um, I think, you know, for tactical emailing, what you have to have is a really clear statement of why this person should have any interest in you. And so you have to really think about how your product or service that you're selling, how it could appeal to this person in the sense of what could it help them accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the emails I get are all about what you do and sometimes how you do it. They're never about what I could achieve or accomplish
Mm-hmm.
or what problem I could solve.
Mm-hmm.
So that would always get my interest more than just all about you. I think that's a good rule of thumb for anyone in sales in their early conversations. It has to be all about the person that you're trying to reach or the person that you're talking to. It's not about you.
Mm-hmm.
They're not interested in all your stuff until they at least decide if they have a little bit of interest in you and what you can lay out for them as far as an accomplishment or a business outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Not just benefits, features and benefits. That's a little bit too superficial, but
Mm-hmm.
more like a serious business outcome, something that saves them money, something that gives them a market advantage,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
And
So that means you have to do some research on the company. What's their strategic plan? Do just a Google search on, ask for a SWOT analysis on this company or ask your AI tool for that. A lot of a lot of business schools ask their graduates to create SWOT. Um, what's the word? A SWOT analysis
mm-hmm.
of lots of different big companies, and I almost always find one
Yeah.
online, one or more, and an AI tool, a Chat GPT, will do that for you too.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps you to understand what challenges they're facing and what they would be trying to achieve. See if it connects in any way with what you're trying to sell.
Yeah.
And then do 3 sentences. Tell them who you are, what you hope to accomplish for them, and ask for a meeting. Don't do it any longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
1 or 2 sentences to explain what your product or service could enable them to do.
Mm-hmm. And and you feel that that's enough value to ask for a meeting in that first email.
If you do it properly, it is. Yeah, you don't want your emails to be very long.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't get a meeting on that one, you can, it takes, they say today it takes 7 touches
Mm-hmm.
before you really get to someone. So I would assume it's going to be a campaign.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And so great insights there, Barbara. What I'm hearing is just lose the traditional approach. And I feel that email is kind of a lazy way to do it. But even if you are going to do it, yes, definitely it's going to take more than one approach, but then you
Or
can
even
layer
if you're
it.
going to call, you still need to craft your voicemail
Yes.
because it's seldom that someone's going to take your call if they don't know you.
Mhm.
So you need to craft your voicemail and you need to craft what you're going to say to the admin
Mhm.
if that's who you get when you call.
Mhm.
What kind of message are you going to leave?
And that's the thing, preempting that, knowing you're going to get the EA, you're going to get the admin. So just in advance, what is that language? What are the words you're going to use? Are you going to use the word help? That's usually a disarming word, but things like that, because people are like, oh my God, they answered. It's like, yeah, now you got to know what you're going to say.
Exactly. So you have to be prepared for any scenario. Someone's going to answer, but it's not the one you're looking for, or nobody's going to answer, or on occasion, the person that you're calling is going to answer.
Yeah.
So you have to know those are different
Yeah,
messages.
totally. And even the research you do on the person, the individual, whether it's LinkedIn, their website, leveraging Chat GPT, it's also understanding the role, the supporting role that that EA plays. And again, using language that he or she resonates with. It says, "Oh, you get my job. Okay, you're not a threat." Um,
Yeah, but you want to tell you, they're not going to put you through or leave a message unless they understand what you want to talk to their boss
mhm.
about. And so you have to be prepared to tell them. And why would he or she want to talk to you?
Mhm.
You need to know the answer to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And back to what you said, those are like what are the strategic initiatives you're working on, but also preempting the objection, and leading with that. So you're disarming them, saying, look, and like that's just easy
So I
stuff.
think AI can help you a lot
Uh-huh.
crafting these messages, but you need to give it enough information to craft something really meaningful,
Mhm.
not superficial.
Mhm.
And you may not be able to use exactly what it gives you. Sometimes, if you give it really good instructions, you'll get something that you can use. Most of the time, you need to edit it
Mhm.
a little bit. But the more information you put in, the better the response you're going to
Yeah,
get from the AI.
totally.
So, work on learning really good prompts, I think.
I think that's the key. That the smarter and the more detailed the input, the better the output. And just like you said, the superficial for me is when you're denting the service. Those are the nice to haves, not the need to haves. And that's just not enough to stop someone to go, you know what, am I going to listen to this girl? It's like, it's just you're the same as everyone else. But like you said, if you can get the prompt and really use Chat GPT to get the stats, to get the information, to understand the strategic initiatives, but maybe not even for this department, how it bleeds out into others. That especially if you're selling into a complex enterprise deals, it's never one department. It's a system, and showing them that you understand those crossovers and the impact if the balls are dropped or things like that. Like that for me is helping them internally navigate complexities, which I say most people struggle with as
Absolutely.
well.
Yeah. Or if you've learned anything about the industry or you always work in the same industry, you can start with um, something like we're surveying COOs in your industry
Mm-hmm.
because we understand that many of you have XYZ problem, something like that. That's more personal. That's specific to their industry. That's something you can connect on. This is something I know about your industry. Is it impacting you?
Mm-hmm.
Here's what you could do about it.
But you're also testing, the waters there and saying, this is what I'm hearing is, and you're validating it from the source because they have the opportunity to correct and say, not really that, but more of this. And then I think when you're looking at content triggers, that you validate it from that person.
Yeah, if you can get them to talk to you or
Yeah.
even email you back, then that's really meaningful. I earlier this year I contracted for 3 months with a lead generation company. I've never done this before.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I did is I got an email from them that was so compelling.
Mm.
I decided I would call them. And here's what was compelling about the email. The first line was congratulating me on launching the Whale Hunters Institute. Boom. So I know they've looked me up, they know who I am. And then the next line was about what they could do, what they'd like to do for my business. With that email was a little slide deck of the agenda for the meeting that they'd like to have.
Mm-hmm.
It was just so compelling. So I hired them for 3 months and I got 70 meetings,
Wow.
70 meetings with real prospects.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a company did that work entirely through AI.
Mm-hmm.
They had no real people working on it all. They were crafting emails and corresponding with people exclusively via AI until they got the meeting and then I talked to people.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them were intrigued with, how did you find me? How
Yeah.
did you get me to take this meeting?
Alexa found you. And then she
Yeah.
passed me
So
passed me
it
over.
it's possible to use the AI, but you have to teach the AI how to help you, really.
Mm-hmm. Well, why don't we transition to how you've used it to help you in cloning yourself as Barbara AI? So tell us, first of all, who and what is Barbara AI and what she's able to do now as a result of, developing her, creating her.
Well, Barbara AI is a clone of me, and it's a large language model. And the way you create a clone of yourself is to upload everything you've ever written into the clone. And so Barbara AI knows practically almost as much about whale hunting as I do. She doesn't have all the experiences that I've had, but she has the knowledge
Mm-hmm.
and she has the ability to synthesize and she has the ability to draw insights from that knowledge. So, for the last few months, she's been available as a voice and someone that you could. She lives inside the Whale Hunters Institute. That's where she is. And she serves as a sales coach to people that are members of the Institute who are taking courses on whale hunting, using materials, using tools, etc., that I've created. And so anything that they're working on or anything that they're trying to do with the client, they can ask Barbara AI
Mm-hmm.
and they'll get an answer very similar to what I would give them. In fact, a lot of times they get a better answer
That's a
because
scary
Barbara
part.
AI can synthesize much faster than I can.
Yeah.
She has an infallible memory, which I do not have.
Yeah.
And I can't at any given moment call on everything that I know to bring it to an answer. Nobody, human being, can't do that,
Mm-hmm.
where a clone can do that exceptionally well. So you can have a great conversation with Barbara AI. And as of today, this is the exact day that Barbara AI became a video version.
Mm.
So you can actually talk
Oh my
to
gosh.
her as if you were talking to me.
That's exciting, but it's it's also a little scary.
Well, for people who are trying to make a difference, trying to
Use
you
it for
you
good.
know things, you've learned things, you've developed things that you really want to share them more broadly.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wonderful way to be able to do that. It's a wonderful way, for example, for a sales leader to be able to coach the sales team, as an adjunct to what they do themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But the sales leader can upload all the sales training materials, everything about the company, everything about the products and services. And then the coach can answer questions about how to use this, what's my next step in this kind of circumstance, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And so it can hugely amplify a training program.
That's phenomenal because I think about even if you look at the corporate level, the sales leaders, the number one reason that I hear they're not coaching is it's time. And sometimes it is that, sometimes it's more, but
And so it's not
mhm,
exactly the same coaching that you would
mhm,
get from your boss. But it's very, very good coaching on what you need to know and how you need to use what you know in the sales circumstance. Plus, the clone remembers who you are. Once you log into the clone, knows your name and your email address. And so you can see or hear all of your conversations. Now with Barbara AI, you don't always have to speak to her in her video form. If you want to have things written down, you can just connect with her by typing, or you can click on a mic and you can speak to her and she'll still respond to you in a typewritten form. So you have documents that
mhm,
you can copy and save. And every time you go back, all of that material will still be there. And the more you interact with the clone, the more the clone can help you because it
mhm.
remembers what you asked before, it remembers what it's spoken to you before.
That's great. So there's continuity there, and even though it's not the same as a physical person, most people are not getting any coaching. So in the absence of nothing, you're getting something.
Right. And the clone is always there 24/7. It's always on, you know. And if your boss is on vacation, the clone is
Mhm.
still there. It's always there. And they're always going to have good advice for you.
Mhm. And think about entrepreneurs or small business owners like us. It allows you to scale your business, right? Because it's one to many.
Well, that's what it's about. Yeah.
So I think the benefits are different for the corporate sales leader, but also for small business owners, allows you to have a greater reach, but still have that level of credibility and knowledge, knowing that they're getting my brain.
If you're a coach, if you're a trainer, if you have a sales business, any kind of business really, but we're talking about sales.
Mhm.
When you have that kind of business, you have a way that you interact with people live, or through Zoom or whatever. But like we're doing now, you have real conversations with your clients, or you have an engagement for a period of time where they're learning something from you. During that engagement and then after that engagement is a great way to keep them connected through the clone.
Mhm. Yeah. But then you become a partner, right? It's not this transactional. There's
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what you always
absolutely
hope to
not the
become,
vendor. You want to
sure.
be the partner. Well, I'm going to definitely give that a shot because that's one thing that, I can only be in one place in one time zone at one time. So that would alleviate some problems there.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that it's really boosting my engagements, my
Mhm.
face-to-face engagements with people because they like the idea of having
Mhm.
that along the way and then always having that there
Yeah.
after I'm gone.
Yeah, that's amazing.
They can always go back and ask
Mhm.
questions of it or have it review things
Mhm.
with them or remind them, what you should do next. Tell them how to use a
Mhm.
tool.
Yeah, and depending on the level of help required, some people, I guess new to sales would really need that hand holding and that like these are the steps, you get to pay and you got to get to impact.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Or people, yeah, in my case,
Mhm.
people that are moving
Yes.
into large account sales. They haven't done large account sales
Yes.
before. And so they need different kinds of advice now. You know, how do I research this client or give me a dossier
Mhm.
on this company, you know,
Mhm.
tell me everything you know about this person, etc. Amazing things that you can find because you can in the instance of clone that I have, you can set it to be extreme, like 100% faithful to
Mhm.
anything I've uploaded and
Okay,
nothing
fills in the
else.
gaps.
Or I can give it like 80/20,
I like
so
that.
it can still call on other information, which
Yeah.
which really helps. So you can it's like a slider, you can control, is it 50/50? And of
Yeah.
course then you get more opportunity for hallucination in there, but it's it allows it
Yeah.
a little more flexibility.
Yeah. Yeah. And then if they're not right, you can say that was the 20% that wasn't me.
Right, yeah. Well, you always have the opportunity then to
Oh,
correct
that's
the
good too.
answers.
That's good too.
And so you're continually
Yeah.
teaching it. I interact with Barbara AI all the time because one of the things I use my clone for is to
Uh-huh.
write new things that come from my
Yes.
material. So, like we talked earlier about
Uh-huh.
writing a quiz, if I ask Barbara AI, in fact, I did that when I was putting the institute together. The AI built all of my um, quizzes
Mhm.
and gave me multiple choice answers, including the wrong
Mhm.
answers and the right answer. So that's where all the quizzes came from.
And when you look at people that say, AI is the enemy, I just think look at the amount of data it can distill through to get what you want. Like humanly, that would have taken you years. That leverage it, like take advantage of it. But like you said, know the inputs, know the prompts. Ask for brevity, ask for the tone, and all that stuff to make it yours. But like, God, it's changing the world.
I'll give you another example. I was working on a proposal, and the person that I was working on it for sent me um, 30 articles, not really articles, academic research papers on this topic to use in the proposal.
Hmm.
Well, it would have taken me a week or more to read all those articles and distill what I needed. So I fed them all into my clone
Hmm.
and then asked for a summary. And I was able to really get excellent
Hmm.
distillation, you know, by keeping keep asking it more questions or amplify on XYZ.
Mhm.
And so I was able to get all the background that I needed in about an hour.
Mhm. And even, obviously when you talk about messaging, and that's very important, but also for you to understand that when you're having a conversation, you have more than a soundbite. Like that's where confidence comes in to have these conversations at the executive level. I've got 30 of your papers distilled down. I have some context. I understand things like talk to me. Like I'm ready. I'm primed. That's confidence. Um, Now, when I look at your system, you have scouting, hunting, and harvesting as part of the whale hunters. So when you look at the hunting part of it, and you think about maybe small companies going into larger companies, and I would say there's a reluctance or there's a fear, and I would also say there's a fear on both sides, both from the seller and the buyer.
Absolutely. In fact, they are more afraid of you than you are of them.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that because I think that when you look at the opportunities, and the fact that you can overcome their fears or their false impersonations of you, but you don't take the chance because you kind of are on the sidelines. So talk to us first of all from the company, the organization that you're targeting it into. What are some of the fears about dealing with a smaller company?
Yeah, well, the way we approach it is have a cross functional group of people from the company, and they determine the specific fears that they think the whale would have of them. That whale is my terminology for their bigger
Mm-hmm.
company. And so they differ a little bit from company to company, but basically they fall in several categories. Starting with, they have a fear of change anyway. If you're going to be a
Mm-hmm.
change-e instead of a changer, most people don't like that very well. So they're afraid of what it's going to mean from that respect. They're afraid of internal conflict. How are they going to decide what to buy that doesn't have half of them really mad about it? And even if you know that a senior executive is going to make the final decision or sign the check, they're not going to buy something that most of their people don't want, or they will buy
Mm-hmm.
something that almost all their people want. Otherwise, they won't buy it. So that's
Mm-hmm.
important. And then the third one is they're afraid of more work. And this really comes into play with a smaller company. Big companies have all kinds of procedures that are um, typical of a bureaucracy. They
Mm-hmm.
have everything has been standardized. They have processes. Some of them have standard operating procedures that guide all of their work. They're accustomed to having things written down, to having a body of knowledge that they can access all the time. Whereas smaller companies, you always know who's going to do what, but very seldom do you have that all written down. And so you
Mm-hmm.
have to get in a mindset with a big company that you have to behave as if you're bigger. You have to
Mm-hmm.
do things more like the way bigger companies do them. And so that you can, that's one way that you mitigate their fears. For example, a lot of smaller companies really fall down when they get a whale, they realize they weren't prepared to have it,
Mm-hmm.
because there's usually a gap of time between when you sign a contract and when you really begin work. And you're working with different people than the ones you sold it to. And so if you
Yep.
don't have a really specific process for how you're going to bring them on board, you can almost lose them or lose their attention before you even get started. Or
Mm-hmm.
you might have a sort of haphazard approach to who you reach out to and when you reach out to them. If you don't have something standardized, you need to create this and have it as part of your sales tool. We call them fear busters. So you would
Mm-hmm.
have an example of what kind of process you would go through with them to bring them on board. And then you follow
Yeah.
through. Usually that involves a lot of people. Or with a smaller company would be several people, but not necessarily people that always work together on the same thing. So just a simple thing like that really reduces their fear and also makes you better at the same time. When you're working with bigger companies, it elevates your whole team when you're successful because you learn more how they operate
Hmm.
and what it takes to satisfy them. You just get better. You get much, much better.
Yeah, I would say you would learn the hard way on the first one, but then emulate, their processes, their.
Yeah, well, I want them to not learn the
I
hard
know,
way. I want them
definitely.
to be successful on their first one. So, what you do when thinking about the whale fears, think of all the ways that they might be afraid of you.
Hmm.
They don't know you, so they don't know if you work like they work. You don't. They don't know if they're going to lose their job. They don't know if they're going to have to do something different. They don't know if they're going to have to learn new technology, which frightens a lot of people, especially if they're older.
Hmm.
And they're frightened. They won't tell you this, but they're frightened that you're going to send the B team, not the A team.
Hmm.
And how can you? So these are all fears that people have. Some of them are fears for their company, some of their fears are about them
Hmm.
personally, what it's going to mean to them. But if you're going to be successful selling to a big company, they are never going to look at your advantages, which small companies have lots of advantages to bring to big companies. They will never buy your advantage unless you mitigate their fear.
Hmm.
That is really well researched and very well documented that fear is the primary reason for buying, especially corporate buying teams who aren't really teams at all. They're just people that have to come together to make a decision.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily even know each other. So you have to think, first of all, of what the fears might be, and then think about what different fears people in different roles may have, because that changes also.
You can see the complexity here, and like what I'm hearing there is that loss aversion theory, and I completely agree with that. That fear is what holds people back and what they respond to. So.
So there's two things you have to do: identify what you think they'll be afraid of, and then come up with what I call a fear buster.
Hmm.
That is something brief, tangible, and specific that you can put in front of them. It might be something on your website, might be a video, it might be a chart, a graph, something visual.
Hmm.
It might be a person who's one of your subject matter experts, but it's not talking points.
Yeah.
It's not just talking points, it's something tangible that you can introduce to the conversation before they even know they're afraid of it.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. That's always teaching them something, right? To loosen their grip. Otherwise, when you start with we and our benefits, it just tightens it, and it's usually status quo that just wins there. Now, you mentioned change their mindset as if you're bigger, and I love that. I'm all about the mindset. So, what are some ways that if you are a small company and you're trying to get through and you're working with someone like you, but you're just used to like that temperature gauge at 60, how do you raise it to 80 so that you start embodying and you become this person or this company that can meet them where they're at? It can truly deliver and know that they can deliver on what they're saying.
So yeah, start with your website. Make sure a lot of smaller companies or solopreneurs do things on the website that I would say are cute. They're little personal things. Um, your bio might talk about your favorite food, your pets, things like that. Get all of that stuff out of your website. Make your website look like, you know, General Motors website or something. Pick a company, make your website. Now they can get away with being cute sometimes, but you can't. You need to make it. A lot of companies have kind of casual pictures of all their employees. Like if you can get all your employees in one room at the same time, that shows you're small. So don't feature those on your website. Show individual pictures, bios. You want to bring your people forward. So do nice professional bios, short, and a professional headset. Make sure that everybody in your company has a professional headset that they can use on LinkedIn, as well as you can use it in proposals or on the website. Just things like that make a difference. They make you look like them.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know that already. You know that there's a risk. So how can you elevate yourself? And taking a good professional headshot, that's, very low cost of to enter that zone there.
Think about um, your address. Where do you live?
Mhm.
If your address isn't in a big city, then you might want to get a mailing address that is in a city,
Mhm.
not in a little
A rural.
outreach time. Like I live in Buckeye, Arizona, which nobody ever heard of Buckeye. I used to live in Scottsdale. That was a
Uh-huh.
great address because,
Yeah.
everybody knows Scottsdale, but they don't know Buckeye. So I just always say on my website Phoenix area.
Yeah. Yeah, make it easy for them.
Mhm.
One thing and this resonates a lot with me because I spent 20 years in complex selling, and so a lot of this I've done. I've failed a lot, knocked on doors, learned the hard way. But after 20 years, you've learned a few outs. But one thing I knew is that we weren't a small organization, but a lot of times when you are dealing with these whales, and you're responding to perhaps an RFP, you're just forced to comply because they have the SOPs, they have the systems. And so sometimes it's a way to just weed them out and say, like, you have to accept our T's and C's. And so what would you say to those companies, the small ones, who are like, we can't, like, we know we can help them, but they're blanketing everything to a level that we can't conform to them. So is there a way for them to still partner with you but not be so rigid?
There are a lot of strategies in RFPs. I write RFPs a lot
Mhm.
for companies that are my clients. And one of the things is you have to be really particular about what you respond to. If you
Mhm.
don't know the company, don't respond to their RFP.
Mhm.
Your chances of getting a deal on a blind RFP are really small unless you are a perfect fit, a really outstanding fit.
Mhm.
So you should be thinking about where the RFPs will come from and get to know people in those companies.
Mhm.
If a lot of industries, the RFP is a given. There's not any other way to get your work except to do RFPs. So you need to learn how to fit your service or product into the RFP guidelines and
Mhm.
how to turn the RFP into an argument, a case for support instead of just blindly following. You have
Mhm.
to 100% comply. I'm not saying you shouldn't comply, but
Yeah.
there are always ways in some answers
Mhm.
to, or a certain kind of repetition of a theme
Yeah.
rather than just going through and answering each question. Know your big story before you do that.
And I think having done that for many years, I think when you do paint a picture with a theme, it's just different. There is a little bit of an emotion there. So when you look at the committee, they might just see it as a little bit different in that there's more intention, there's more thought there. But it's like if you're putting this level of intentionality now, imagine what you're going to be like later versus just cut and paste, cut and paste. See page 9, see page 9. And you're just like, how much time did you really spend on this?
There are other ways to do that as well. I'll give you an example. We were working with a construction company, and they had done a lot of high-rise condominiums. They were very, very high-end builder, general contractor. They had done beautiful complexes of apartments or condos mostly, and they wanted to get into the resort business where they would be building the whole resort, and they didn't have any background in that already. So
Mm-hmm.
it was very hard for them to break in. They had gone after several opportunities and didn't get it. So we worked with them on one opportunity, and we knew who the competitor was. There was only one competitor, but the competitor was a much bigger company. They were a national company, and they had built some iconic resorts. And so what we decided to do, instead of trying to go head to head with them, which we couldn't, but we advised them to do the whole proposal on the basis of what they should be afraid of,
Mm.
introduce all the fears. So this was going to be a waterfront complex. So they just wrote into this all the things they could think of that are complications when you're building on or near salt water. And the other big fear was the escalation of cost of supplies and the problems with the supply chain. So that's everything that they focused on and how they had superior knowledge of
Mhm.
these things because of where they were located as
Mhm.
opposed to a national company. They had a cadre of subcontractors that they knew and they could count on. And so they never had any delays, this kind of thing. So it was all about what are you afraid of? And this is what you need to be afraid of.
Yeah.
And this is what we do about it. And they won.
I was gonna say, I'm sure that got their attention because A, it's so different, but that's a trusted advisor. Like you're teaching me something I haven't thought about. You've saving me money, resources. I love your quote. It cost a lot to come in second.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
That's just think of Texas Hold'em, you know.
totally.
Come in second, you're the biggest loser.
I
It
know, but
costs you
look at
the
all the
most to lose.
resources and time and energy you've spent into it. And that's why I think it's very important to look at the RFP. If you are, a lot of times they want their free quotes anyway. So they're just using you to drive the person they want
Most of the
down.
time, that's it. Yeah.
And so I think it's important to like the ideal is to build a relationship, understand the committee who's involved, and spec it out to your product or service. That's the golden standard. But
Yeah. And even
sometimes,
if you can't do that, if you know them ahead of time and
hmm
they're sending the RFP to you because they want to hear from you.
hmm
That's what you need to know.
yes,
Do they want to hear from you or are they just price checking?
yeah, totally. But even what you said about teaching them, and in that instance, they were introducing fear. There's many times that I would say these are things you should look out for, knowing that my competitors had them. I was teaching them, but I wasn't slamming my competition. So then you would see the RFP saying, please include this, because some of them had these big, bulky accessories that weren't included in the RFP. And when then they bought it, they're like, what the heck is this? I need another elevator to bring this in that nobody. So I was more just saying, hey, just ensuring an equal playing field, but ultimately looking out for them, going, you guys are spending, this is tax money you're spending. Make sure you do your due diligence, because the impact after, you don't have storage, you don't have this stuff, and then you're not going to buy for another 5 to 7 years, and you've made a purchase that doesn't align to your best interest. And so we would win, but it was there in genuinely helping them, going, you're not seeing the full picture here.
Strategy if you can do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well,
And the thing
totally.
is, once the RFP is out, you can't talk to anybody.
I know the
And you
whole
should never
blacklisted thing
violate
comes in.
that because you can be banned for years if you do that, if you try to do that when you're not supposed to. So you have to have that relationship ahead of time.
You do. You do. And we've danced with that a few times. Being in the incumbent, you can talk about your product, but not this. But like, if someone is out to get you, they can, if you're in a little bit of infringement, it's dangerous waters to be
Yeah, it
walking on.
is really. So, yeah, you need to be thinking about their fears and your fear busters. I mean,
Mhm.
that's really critically important in an RFP. Usually, even people who know that in a normal sale, they don't necessarily know how to apply that into their RFP. They don't
Mhm.
think about it the same.
Mhm.
I have been a person who read proposals in my other lives.
Mhm.
So I've
Yeah.
written them and I've read them and I know how that goes. Sometimes you try to write in some part of the proposal, you don't really like what they're asking and so you write in what you want to do instead.
Mhm.
What happens is they there's a process of elimination where people only read a little bit and they look for a reason to set it aside.
Mhm.
And so if you're violating anything, you have to do that very subtly or you have to understand that that's okay
Yeah.
in the beginning or else just don't answer it.
Yeah. Otherwise, you are the reason they set it aside. Your
And
response.
you're spilling out a lot of information, giving
Yeah.
them a lot in an RFP. You're really giving away a lot.
Yeah.
And in many cases, if it's a public company, many cases those RFPs are public.
Mhm.
Or if they're government, they're definitely public. And
Mhm.
your competitors can get a hold of them
Totally. Yeah.
easily.
Mhm.
So you don't want to do that unless the the potential reward is much higher than the potential cost.
Mhm. For sure. And so, as we wrap up, Barbara, for those folks who are listening who are in a small to medium sized company looking to target the whales, knowing that the impact's going to have, what are two or three things you would leave them with, just as whether it's a mindset approach, you know, focus sharpening your prompts? Like, what are some things they can do immediately that will help them start breaking the barriers into the whales?
Well, the first thing, of course, is the mindset. So think big. Don't think like a minnow. Don't be a
Mm-hmm.
minnow in a sea of whales.
Yes.
Look big. Look as big as you can and think as big as you can. Second thing is do your homework. You should do an intense amount of research, even for a tactical sale these days. Know something about the people that you want to talk to. And I say people because it's not going to be a one on one
No.
for anything big anymore. And what's a good third thing? Think about how to get your appointment um, without a cold call or a cold email.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So think big, do your homework, and how to get the appointment. So maybe leveraging your network, getting a warm lead or a referral into these big companies. Again, that reduces a lot of friction. And I know, the close rate jumps when someone vets you that's good reputation.
Absolutely. So look at who you know on LinkedIn and
Hmm.
look at who your friends know on LinkedIn that could your friends are
Hmm.
colleagues, associates in your business that you know who could
Hmm.
make an introduction to anybody.
Yeah, even Navigator, I do connections of, and then I run that, and then I'm happy to write a little thing saying, Barbara, I know you're introduced to this person. I give you context so that you should just hit the send button. But like most people, if they know them, have no problem sending that, and it just opens the door immediately. So I think that's an underutilized tactic there. So if you're listening, get on to Navigator. So Barbara, if folks are listening and they're like, I want to learn how to develop my own Barbara AI, or they're wanting to learn more about Whale Hunters Institute and just connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can go to thewhalehunters.com or they can reach me, Barbara, at thewhalehunters.com. Always happy to hear from your listeners.
Thank you. And will they get you or will they get Barbara AI or a
They'll
combination of
get
both?
me first.
Well, listen, thank you for sharing all your insights. You've opened my eyes. Again, AI is continually evolving. I think the whole thing is to stay with it. It can be overwhelming, but take parts of it that you know you can use and help you, but also help your customers. So, thank you for sharing your insights. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll see you next time.